So it is that back to school time, and I know we're all so excited about it. And if you're a college student like me, you're probably looking for a new device for college work. And the baseline 2019 MacBook Pro 13-inch as well as the iPad Pro 11 and 12.9 are great contenders. So in this video, I thought I'd go over a bunch of school-oriented tasks comparing both to help you determine which one of these devices is right for you. But before we continue here, I just want to say this video has been a production headache. Let me tell you, I've just been doing 3 hours of shooting and I already have a headache from all the cross-examining and comparing I've had to do. I've yet to start editing. So I'd really appreciate it if you'd smash that like button, leave me a comment, whether it's a question, suggestion, or an opinion. The algorithm likes that and will help push my videos to more people. So without wasting any more time, let's jump into this comparison. Alright, so the first school-oriented task I want to demo here today is word processing. And with the iPad Pro, you have several options here. You have Google Docs, Pages, although right now with the iPad OS beta, it's not working for some reason, but it will work with the final release, so don't worry. You also have Microsoft Word, which I don't have, but if you like Microsoft Word, you're probably going to stick with it. All word processing apps are pretty much the same, so I'm going to go into Google Docs here and just kind of demo the experience, or like what it's like here. So as you can see, you can scroll through your documents. I'm going to go to my gaming setup outline, which I just had open, and let's go to edit here. So what's cool about the iPad Pro is you have a decent sized virtual keyboard, especially with the 12.9 inch. So I can, say, and I was doing a test earlier here, I'm just going to delete this and retype it. I am typing on an iPad Pro. And, Pro. And it's not a bad experience. I have been typing on an iPad for a while, I'll give you that. I've been using an iPad for school for the past 4 years. I used an iPad Air 2 throughout high school, and it's a totally usable experience, even on a 9.7 inch screen. So imagine on an 11 inch screen and bigger, it's going to be a decent experience. Obviously, if you are someone who needs a physical keyboard, you can get a keyboard case for this device, but you are going to sacrifice kind of the portability and the form factor, I guess, of the iPad. You're going to have to, deal with having this cumbersome keyboard, behind the screen or wherever it folds behind or however your case works. But yeah, I will say the keyboard is definitely big enough to type on comfortably. I wouldn't recommend typing a thesis with it, but you can definitely do that. You can also highlight text with the pencil, so this level of fine input kind of makes up for the lack of a trackpad, and it's also kind of enjoyable, Another thing I want to bring up is there are apps that will allow you to, write and turn that into text, like Selby Pen Script. I'll leave a link to this in the video description, so you can say like, I am using Apple Pencil, so see here, to write. So there you go, like, oh, excuse me, my messy cursive was not working out there, but it's really impressive how this app will, identify my really messy handwriting for the most part. So you can do handwriting to text, which is a really great experience. It's not perfect, but if you want to write something literally with your iPad and make use of the pencil, that is an option you have here. You also have the ability to access the desktop site with the new Safari app and iPad OS here. So if you really want the full desktop experience, you can by all means have that. And yeah, all it really is a MacBook minus the keyboard in this case. So you have all the same abilities. Same thing with the Selby Pen Script. You can still, type something or write something out literally. With the MacBook here, like the iPad, you have several options as to, what you can use: Word, Pages, Docs. I'm just going to jump right into Docs here because this is what I, once again, primarily use. I'll go into that gaming setup document that I have here today. And I just want to say, with the built-in keyboard and the trackpad right next to each other, I personally feel more efficient, especially, dragging around the cursor, copy, delete, a bunch of, different keyboard shortcuts. Yes, you can get, a external keyboard or a keyboard case with the iPad Pro, but it's just not quite the same feel, I guess. You just have to go to the store and use it yourself, or if you use a laptop, you might know what I'm saying. It's kind of hard to quantify with words, but I don't know, like, I personally just feel more efficient scrolling around and just having like a window and, highlighting text and copying and pasting and doing other stuff with, once again, a built-in keyboard and a trackpad. And to elaborate a little bit more on the keyboard, especially with the touch bar, once again, it's a decent, clicky experience. You get some tactility with the keys here. They are of a nice size. However, it's not going to be the same experience as you get with like a mechanical keyboard, but it's a keyboard nonetheless, and not a bad one at that. So the cons with the iPad Pro in terms of word processing is obviously the lack of a built-in keyboard. You're going to have to spend an extra chunk of change to get a decent one if you want a really great typing experience. But the pros are, mean, you have literally the same experience minus the keyboard plus the pencil, and if you prefer that method of input, then the more power to you. You have access to the actual desktop app if you really want it, and you also have access to the really nice and refined mobile app or iPad app, which I've been using for a while and I have no trouble, dealing with. So the cons with this for word processing, I cannot really think of any. I mean, laptops and computers in general have been made for this. They have built-in keyboards. The pros, obviously, I mean, this is a laptop. It's meant to be put in your lap. It's a very comfortable experience. It's meant for word processing and typing, a lot of it. So if you're somebody who is constantly responding to emails, constantly typing, like long documents, essays, I would say get the MacBook Pro or a laptop for that matter over the iPad Pro, even if you plan on getting a keyboard case with it. It's just a better overall mobile typing experience. Next up, I want to talk about note-taking. And I think this is where the iPad Pro really does shine because you have the second gen pencil. So let's go into my favorite note-taking app. By the way, there are so many note-taking apps for the iPad Pro. You have Notability, you have the actual Notes app, but this one is my favorite, I will say. And this is actually how I plan out my day right now. Although I'm not in school yet, I do use this app as like a planner. So this is today's plan, so I can check things off. Oh, I was in the eraser. I can also double tap to erase what I just wrote there. But yeah, let's go into, like an actual note here that I was writing. So like, say I was in one of my, business classes. So I can just be like business 101. I don't know. Just write some basic thing down. Maybe write a date. 9/5/19. Let's, take a note here. So I'll make a little bullet point and the basics of, marketing. I don't know. I love writing in cursive and it's just been a joy using the Apple Pencil. It's extremely smooth. I love the feel of the plastic on glass. So I can say something like, I am writing a note. I think it is actually proven that handwriting your notes does get the information in your head more. So yeah, I really do enjoy handwriting notes here with the iPad Pro. This will be my choice of how I, go paperless in college. Note-taking with a Mac is a little bit different. You can pretty much use any word processor, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know if you use Notability for Mac or any other application, but I would just use, Docs or Pages if I was taking notes with my MacBook Pro. And of course, you can just take notes really quickly. Say your professor talks really, really quickly. You can just, just echo what he's saying. So I don't know, maybe like you can say like the event, which was called Bleeding Kansas, occurred in the 1850s and was a dispute between northerners and southerners. So as you can see, if you can type really quickly, if your word per minute count is high, you can definitely get things, fleshed out really, really quickly. So that is a plus with having a MacBook for note taking. The cons are, you lack a keyboard. So if you really want to get some things down quickly, if your professor talks really fast, you might have some trouble jotting things down. Although I don't, because I always write in really fast, messy cursive. But the pros are, once again, you get the pencil and you have the ability to hand write notes, which is a really great experience, as I've said. So the cons with a MacBook Pro for note-taking obviously is you don't get that handwriting aspect. You don't have a stylus where you can actually hand write your notes, and that's a big deal. So if you're someone who wants to, go paperless or who likes to use composition notebooks, this is not going to be the device for you. But if you're somebody who, is used to typing for notes, wants to, really flesh out or get a lot of text on your page really quickly, then, using a keyboard case with an iPad might be the right choice. But I would say, once again, like I said, with word processing, having a laptop is a really great mobile typing experience. And if you're going to be doing a lot of that, a lot of typing with a keyboard on the go in a bunch of different situations, sitting down, standing up, having it on a desk, then a MacBook, I would say, is going to be the appropriate device for what you need it for. Next up, I want to talk about email. And with iPad Pro, you have several decent clients you can use, like the Apple, like the native one, the default one. I actually use the Gmail client, and that's really enjoyable. I like the sidebar view here, and you can answer your emails here and respond to them. It's like a similar story to Google Docs. You can also, once again, go to the actual website here. So I can go to gmail.com and get the desktop experience if I really wanted. So yeah, this is the same experience as you would get on your desktop if you really want that. So this kind of allows this device to get closer to the MacBook Pro in, the desktop sort of aspect. You still have the ability, to highlight text and copy it with the Apple Pencil and just navigate with the Apple Pencil in general, and then responding to particular emails as well is, pretty decent. You have this view right here, and you can, start typing with the virtual keyboard or, a keyboard case if you have one. Emailing on my MacBook is very similar to what you can do with the iPad. I mean, as we know, once again, you can have the full desktop site on both of these devices. But once again, like I said about word processing, there's just something about having the trackpad, which is nice and big, next to the keyboard, having, your input very close to each other, you don't have to really move your hands too much. It makes you feel efficient. That's just my opinion. Once again, maybe you're used to using an iPad, maybe you prefer the Apple Pencil and typing with the virtual keyboard. This is just a preference thing, but I can tell you, I don't know, I just feel more efficient, especially when, responding to a particular email. So let's jump into an email that I got from some company that wants to send me a product here. I can scroll through it, I can look at the images of the product that they sent me, and if I want to respond, I click respond. Hi, Karen, thanks for reaching out. And then I can just get right down to business, keyboard shortcuts and all. Obviously, you can do this with a keyboard case if you have one with your iPad Pro, but once again, I'm going to say it, just having the trackpad there next to the keyboard, being able to really quickly and nimbly move the cursor around and get around, highlighting text and, interacting with different buttons and everything. I don't know, it just feels like a more efficient experience. So cons with the iPad Pro, I mean, it's the same case as Google Docs. You do not have a built-in keyboard, and I find having one, just a physical keyboard to flesh out an email really quickly is really important to my workflow. But again, you can get a, keyboard case. So if you really want a physical keyboard, you can buy one. But the pros are, I mean, it's the same experience you're getting with the MacBook Pro. You can have the desktop experience. You also have the really, once again, refined mobile experience, like I said about Google Docs. So are there any cons with the email experience with the MacBook Pro? Not really. I mean, other than the fact that this is a bigger form factor, I mean, you have a great, typing experience with the keyboard and trackpad just right there for you. You have a really easy time, interacting with text and highlighting. If you know keyboard shortcuts, you're going to feel really, really efficient. And you also, once again, have access to Finder within, email attachments. So yeah, I would say this is probably the superior device for, accessing your email. Although, once again, I'm basing it off my preference. I am pretty efficient with, a laptop or Mac OS as it is. But once again, with iPad Pro, you still get the desktop app. You still get, the ability to type with a keyboard and Apple Pencil. And I don't know, I feel like both are pretty comparable. But I will say, if you're answering emails day in and day out all the time, like I recommended with word processing, I would go with the MacBook Pro simply because, I don't know, the keyboard and trackpad make for, once again, a very efficient feeling experience. Next up, I want to talk about multitasking. And with iPad Pro here, with iPadOS, you can have a similar experience to macOS. We can have a split screen view. You can also bring up an app and like a carousel view here. I'll show you right quick. So you can have it here. You can bring it here, swipe it away, bring it back. And yeah, you can definitely do two things at once with your iPad. No issue here at all. And then, of course, you can bring up your dock to switch to another app, like let's just say YouTube, or then if you want to see all your apps at once, you can just swipe all the way up and swipe around, kind of similar to like Expose or Launchpad or whatever it's called on Mac OS. So the con, or rather only con I can really think about with iPad in terms of multitasking is like the lack of a desktop where you can have multiple, apps open, behind each other or layered, if you know what I'm saying. But the full screen multitasking experience is basically the same. You can do two things at once, watch a video, type up a document, surf the web. Absolutely no issues. So in terms of multitasking, in many ways, it's a very similar experience to what you would get with a MacBook Pro. So as we know, multitasking with, Mac OS is a little bit different. You can, kind of layer your windows and interact with them with the trackpad, but you could also, like with iPad, do a full screen view and have like this split screen mode going on here. So let's go to calendar. You can, resize the windows here. So me personally, I like to have two tabs open in my browser. So if I'm doing, typing up like an essay, I can be like researching, news and other like, sources. So I can, like Google search news and go to, I don't know, NPR. And I can refer to a document or an article and, type something up here on the right or the left. If I want to, do a direct quote, I can just, highlight like I would with the Apple Pencil, by the way. I mean, this is a very similar experience, I will say, to the iPad Pro, other than the fact that, I'm using a keyboard and a trackpad. Yeah, so multitasking full screen, not too much different from an iPad other than having, the keyboard and trackpad built in. And yeah, I will say, it is nice to have, all your apps kind of layered on the desktop. You can just kind of drag them around and not have them in the full screen mode if you don't want. You can also minimize them very easily. As we know, that's just a, a feature of having a, desktop or like a laptop operating system. You can also have like a Finder window open in whatever media app you're using, whether it's a word processing app or Photoshop in this case. You can just drag and drop files directly from there. But you can also do a similar thing with the Files app on iPad as well. You can also swipe through, multiple multiple desktops that you can have open. That's a big plus with Mac OS here, so you can switch between, once again, multiple desktops, have some free floating apps here, and also have some, full screen apps as well. So the con, or rather only con I can really think about with iPad in terms of multitasking, is like the lack of a desktop where you can have multiple, apps open, behind each other or layered, if you know what I'm saying. But the full screen multitasking experience is basically the same. You can do two things at once, watch a video, type up a document, surf the web, absolutely no issues. So in terms of multitasking, in many ways, it's a very similar experience to what you would get with a MacBook Pro. So are there any cons with multitasking with Mac OS on the MacBook Pro? I would say no. This device is made for that. With the multi-touch gestures with the trackpad, I mean, it's always been a great device to have multiple apps open with, whether you have them layered on like a desktop setting or have them in full screen. This full screen mode is also very similar to the iPad Pro, so if you do most of this, you're not really going to miss out using the iPad Pro and vice versa. Next up, I want to talk about video watching experience here. And this is important because, as you know, we all watch a lot of YouTube, and if your professor posts, a lecture online that you have to watch, you might want to know what the experience is like here. So I really do enjoy watching videos on my iPad Pro. The YouTube app is, really great, a very refined experience like all the other Google apps. You have great stereo speakers on all four corners here, and it's a very, holdable device. You can just kind of lay in bed with this and just, watch videos for hours very comfortably. And if I haven't already said it, the display here with the iPad Pro on both sizes is really great to look at. Very colorful, very contrasty, and very bright. So again, really great for media consumption. In terms of video watching on the MacBook Pro, it's nothing that special. You can have, full screen windows. Obviously, the speakers are really great here. Pretty loud too as well. I would say they're comparable, if not very similar in quality to the iPad Pro's speakers, which is really good. You can also scroll through or scrub through videos with the touch bar here if you're using Safari, which is convenient. But I mean, this is not the device you're going to want to buy if you're watching a lot of video lectures or YouTube in general. As I said, or will say, iPad is a very great device to watch videos on. This is, can do it, but it's not like the best, most convenient form factor. Although I will say, sitting down on the couch and having this on your lap while watching videos is a pleasant experience. You also get a headphone jack, so you can plug in wired headphones. So are there any cons with watching video on an iPad? No, I don't really think so, other than the fact that this device lacks a headphone jack, but that's like a more general issue. Watching video on this device is really, really great, and I prefer to do this with my iPad over my MacBook any day, so this is a category where I think the iPad definitely does win. So the cons with watching videos on the MacBook Pro, obviously the form factor in some cases is not going to be convenient. You can't lay down in bed and watch videos comfortably with this, but in a library setting or whatever, or if you have this on your desk, this is going to be a comfortable experience. But kind of referring back to the cons, I mean, this is just like any other laptop you'd watch a video on. It's decent for, on desk, viewership, but you can also have a case for your iPad Pro, which would prop it up the same way. So it's nothing that special. If you want an exceptional video watching experience, you're going to want to go with the iPad Pro, if I haven't already said that. And yeah, I mean, it can do it. You can watch videos on your MacBook, but once again, the experience is not going to be anything exceptional. Next up, let's talk about PDF interaction or just reading in general. With iPad Pro here, you get a Kindle-ish size device, and iBooks is just a really nice experience here, especially with the touchscreen. You can just hold this in your hand, especially in portrait mode, and just read as you were with an actual book. So I really do enjoy reading here and highlighting text with the pencil. So yeah, if you're going to be doing a lot of reading, a lot of, textbook interaction and PDF manipulation, this is definitely the device for you. In terms of reading with the MacBook Pro, it's a decent experience. You can look at PDFs and websites, no problem. The text is pretty big. You can scroll through without touching the screen, It's a decent experience. And let's say you have a book open here and you want to refer to it while you're typing up a document or looking at another article. Let's go to Docs once again, create a new doc. You can, use the trackpad to go through the book here and type up a whole new document, once again referring to the text. So are there any real cons to using an iPad Pro for PDF interaction and, novel reading and whatever, textbook replacement? There are absolutely none I can think of. I, really enjoyed my experience throughout high school using an iPad, my iPad Air 2, to replace all my textbooks, from reading novels to going through a math textbook and reading other school-oriented PDFs. This device definitely wins this category for sure. It's just a great form factor, and the pencil also adds to it, and the touchscreen too. You can just kind of flip through stuff and scroll. There really is no comparison here. But yeah, the cons with reading on this device, I mean, it's just not the same as holding a device in your hand that would resemble a book or a Kindle. But the pros, I would say, I mean, you can do, like I said, referring to a text or a website or a PDF with the trackpad while taking advantage of the integrated keyboard to type anything up. You also have keyboard shortcuts as well, but you can also do this with the iPad Pro the same way. So there really is no difference in that regard. But yeah, the iPad Pro definitely does have a superior reading experience. Next up, let's talk about presentation creation with both these devices here. And I actually prefer to use Keynote on both my Mac and my iPad, so let's open that up here. Obviously, you can use, PowerPoint and Google Slides. So here is a presentation I made during my freshman year of high school on the FBI versus Apple case. So as you can see, you can scroll through here and let's, present. One thing I do like about the iPad is that you can, actually hold it in your hand while you're presenting, and so you can, have your animations happen and go through your PowerPoint. You don't have to get like a clicker. You don't have to hold your laptop awkwardly, so you can go through your entire presentation while holding your iPad and use it as the remote. So I just created a new one here, and I'm going to drag over my Safari window so we can maybe, copy over an image. So maybe we can see if we want that, and I can drag it over here, and boom. It's as simple as that. Very similar to that of what you could do with a Mac with an actual mouse, or a trackpad. So that's actually really cool. You can also, add text. So type whatever. This is a title. So yeah, you can definitely get away with creating a decent presentation using just your iPad Pro. You can also mark up things in the presentation itself, which is something that you cannot do, or as far as I can know, cannot do with a Mac. So creating a presentation with your MacBook, it's a nice experience. Obviously, you have the built-in keyboard and the trackpad, which, as I will continue to say, make you feel, a little bit more efficient, I would say, having all the input in one area. You can also drag and drop files in really easily, but you can also do that with the iPad Pro within like a browser or like a files window or whatever. And if you're going to want to present things here, I mean, it's just going to be more of an awkward experience. You're going to want to have a clicker. You're going to want to put this away. You're not going to be holding this in your hand if you want to present. So the iPad Pro does have a leg up there in terms of just presenting a presentation. But yeah, if you want to, get a lot of text within, a presentation, you want to really flesh out a lot of data or whatever points you are going to want to make, this is my preferred method. I really enjoy just going to town and just typing things out really quickly and, being able to highlight text and delete and, select all and copy and paste and all that. But once again, you can do the same things with the iPad Pro if you do have a keyboard case. And here is the same presentation I did here. You can kind of go through it. I just find it easier to, make some subtle adjustments to, the presentation here with the trackpad, scrolling through all that good stuff. You can also minimize and, have like a Safari window over it. Let's go drag that onto the same desktop. Here it is right here. You can kind of switch between the two. So if you want to have like a full screen view, you can definitely, switch back and forth between the apps, no problem. So are there any cons with creating a presentation with the iPad Pro? I mean, I guess I personally would prefer to use, a built-in keyboard and the trackpad. I feel like, having my hands in that kind of position helps me get work done more effectively, having a desktop too, and just having the whole macOS experience in my personal experience allows me to be a little bit more efficient. But with iPad OS now, with the way you can, interact with the operating system, the, multitasking, the dock, the new file system, which I'll mention later on here, the ability to mark up, the ability to use your iPad as a remote is a big plus. So I would say, there are trade-offs that you can make. You have a bigger display, you have a keyboard and a mouse with the MacBook, but you have, decent multitasking with both devices, and once again, the ability to use your iPad as a remote. So both devices are, I would say, great for, presentation making. You just have to kind of see which features you like better. And it may sound like I'm being really biased, against the iPad Pro, but I gotta say, I used iPad throughout high school, even with a keyboard case. I've had styluses too. I always preferred to use my MacBook Pro or just a laptop in general to create presentations, whether they were with PowerPoint or Keynote in class. I just felt like I could get work done quicker, even with the keyboard case. I don't know, they tend to be smaller with the iPad Pro. With the iPad Pro 12.9, that might not be the case. And I think that if you, got used to interacting with the interface, with the Apple Pencil, if you know keyboard shortcuts, you could probably reach the same level of efficiency. But I don't know, in my personal experience, having used iPad for school, although albeit without iPad OS, I always found this device, the MacBook or a laptop in general, to be the better, presentation making machine. But in terms of presenting and just, like making documents or creating presentations on the go all the time, the iPad Pro might be the better device. And last up, I want to talk about file management with both these devices. Let's go to the Files app in iPad OS. And as we know, it is a similar experience to Finder. It's a watered down Finder. You have different folders you can go into, view different files, drag and drop stuff around the application. Google Drive, iCloud Drive recently deleted a downloads folder. You can mark certain files with colors. You also have access to external storage as you would with a MacBook Pro, so there's no difference in that regard. You can access, files on an SD card or a flash drive if you have the right dongle or adapter. In regard to file management with the MacBook Pro here, it's definitely superior to that of the iPad Pro. No doubt about that. Finder is a really great way to, search for files and to deal with all your files. You have a downloads tab, a documents tab, desktop tab, an applications tab. You have a great search capability. You can empty things into the trash very easily, so you can get rid of pretty much any file with a couple keyboard strokes. And just overall interacting with files, dragging, dropping them, interacting with your downloads folder with the trackpad, with an actual cursor too. It's just a superior experience. So yeah, the cons with the iPad, the only thing I can really say is that it's not quite Finder. It's not as good as the file system you get with Mac OS, but it's definitely getting there. And for all that you get with iPad, the form factor, the touchscreen, multi-touch, the Apple Pencil, I think it may be worth the compromise to you. Cons here, there are pretty much none. Pros, everything. The file management system is obviously going to be better with a desktop or laptop operating system. But I will say though, if you are really liking the iPad form factor, if you like iPad OS and the Apple Pencil, and it just works better in your workflow, the Files app has come a long way and has adopted many of the aspects of Finder. So if you're willing to deal with some of the lack of functionality you get with the Files app, then iPad Pro might be the device for you 100%. It's definitely manageable. And once again, the Files app is way better than it was. But if you're someone who's really freaky about organizing files and wants to have a lot of control over what you're downloading and everything, then a MacBook might be, the preferred device simply because the file management system is just better. And that about wraps things up. I hope this video helped you out. If you're looking at both these devices, I just recommend going to the store. If you're still unsure, using both devices in person will help you determine which device is right for you. But I hope I was able to offer an objective overview and comparison here. I'd really appreciate it if you leave a like on this video, comment if you have any questions, suggestions, or opinions, and subscribe for more content like this. And as always, I'm Noah, and I will catch you all in the next one.